Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we're here with the founders of Halda, Lance Hydrick and Dallin Palmer. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Great to have you. We've been having a few laughs about where you guys are located, which is Provo.
Yep.
And we're talking about the benefits of various spots geographically along the Wasatch Front. And maybe we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But thanks for taking the time. Let's start with, what is Halda?
Halda is a conversion tool for marketers that lives on the website and helps to personalize content for every website visitor.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
But drill in a little bit more. Like Silicon Slopes has a website.
Yep.
And I don't think we do much with it other than like tell a story here or there. But what is the secret sauce then with Halda and that CRO?
I think one of the biggest things is similar to how you were talking about. It's like, okay, we've got a website. We don't do too much with it. Funny enough, we started in higher education. They sort of felt the same way. Education traditionally buys all their leads from ACT and SAT. You might not know that. Those test companies just package up your info and sell it away. And so when we first got going, there was a big unawareness of using their website as a conversion tool, as a way to get leads. So even for you guys, you might think, okay, well, I've got people that I want to get subscribed to my content, or maybe I have people that want to donate and like support what we're doing. They're going to visit your website, those key stakeholders. And the ones that are most interested are there. So what we do is our software is an overlay, so you don't have to rebuild your website to implement personalization, just to allow you to say, hey, based on the pages you're on, you're probably in this type of moment. And let me personalize that experience. So for people that are making donations to, let's say, someone like you guys, or to a private K-12 school, it's all about saying, okay, you're on my donors page. Tell me a bit more about you, and I'll tell you instantly personalized things in return that'll help you figure out what you need to do. I know it's like a really zoomed out version.
Yeah.
But it's really just about saying a lot of personalization tools are sort of, hey, I'm going to observe your behavior, and I'm going to try and guess what you want. So you can imagine going into a retail store, and rather than someone coming and saying, hey, what are you looking for today? Let me help you find it. They're like peeking at you like, oh, look at that. I think they're looking at shoes. Are they looking at shoes? I'm going to throw this one at them. That didn't convert. Crap. Let's try something else. So ours is all about engaging that person, learning something, and then having an instant response that personalizes it. Does that help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's, like when I only go in a few stores a year. And one is Cal Ranch, right?
Okay.
And if I'm at the gun counter, we're not talking about decoys.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's what you guys are trying to do in the digital realm.
Yeah. In like a higher ed perspective, an example would be the status quo right now is you go to a financial aid page on a college or university website, and the calls to action typically are apply now, learn more, contact us. They have nothing to do with why you're actually on the page, which is trying to figure out how you can pay for school.
Yeah.
And so our software, our overlay, will be in the moment with the student to say, hey, let us help you figure out if you could be eligible for a scholarship or some sort of financial aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it'll remember you. So the next time you come back, it'll say, hey, Lance, welcome back. This is what we learned last time. This is where we should go from here. Similar to if you go to Cal Ranch and they're like, oh man, welcome back. I know we were talking about guns last time. You probably need some ammo, or these are the next steps for you for this hunting trip you're planning for. So it's just a way to remember and make that website experience more human.
Yeah. Logical, right? Like the other store that I'm in frequently is 7-Eleven.
Classy places.
Yeah.
This is really
Stay
good.
classy. And it's one of the funnest things to observe, because I'm basically like the overlay of your guys' product. And there's certain people at, a 7-Eleven in a metropolis, like they know their names.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they just grab what it is, whether it's cigarettes or like the Big Bite.
Yeah.
And they say their name.
Yep.
And they've probably been in there 5 times a week for 5 years.
Yeah.
And 7-Eleven's doing something right, and that the employees are still there that long, right? So
Right.
it's kind of fun to watch. It's like being in a small town
Exactly.
where everyone knows your name. And
Yep.
It's very cool.
Yep. That's the vibe.
Yeah, I love it. So we talked about higher ed so far. It sounds like that's where you've decided to make your first foray. Why was that?
Yeah, we sort of got started there. That's where Dallin and I met at a company called Chegg. which sold into the higher ed space. And so just a lot of our experience comes from higher ed, and it turned out to be turned out to actually be a really great incubator.
Yeah.
Because we bootstrapped for a while before we raised funds. So that's why we started in higher ed.
Yeah. And there's a lot of higher ed institutions, right? Like it's a fairly lucrative market if you can figure out how to play in it, I would assume.
Yeah. I think it's hard for people to figure out how to sell into it. So there's about 4,000 in the United States. We've got about 100 of them right now that partner with us. So still plenty of greenfield there for sure.
Yeah. And these could be community colleges, Ivy League, everything in between.
Yep.
Very cool. You mentioned, meeting at a different startup. I remember Chegg. We either looked at investing in them or they were part of a case study when I was at University Growth Fund.
Oh, cool.
Something about textbooks?
That's what Chegg did, yeah. So Lance and I were part of a group called Zinch, which was Sid Cromanhook and Brad Hagan and Mick Hagan, their startup.
Yeah.
And so that department had sold it to Chegg. So by the time we got there, when they bought it, 2 years out from IPO?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. And so I actually joined too late. Lance was there right at the beginning with Sid and all those guys. I was after Chegg had already bought it. But the primary business was textbook rentals.
Yeah.
What Lance and I were involved in was lead gen.
The enrollment services side of the house. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. And then you guys have experienced something that not a lot of folks here, at least locally, have, which is Y Combinator, right?
Yep.
And when was that?
That was in 2019, summer of 2019.
Summer 2019.
Cool. So before COVID.
Luckily,
yeah. I think we were the last batch before COVID hit.
Yep.
So
And
we
they
were
shut it
actually,
down.
yeah, in the Bay Area for a number of months building a business there.
What was that like?
It was
Unique.
it was good. There are lots of benefits to it. Obviously, the network is great to be a part of. The company we were building actually is not Halda. It was a healthcare tech company that business partner's still running to this day. And that was more of an enterprise level play. And so Y Combinator is, in my estimation, a little more. It's more difficult to get benefit when you're closing a deal every 3 months or so.
Yeah.
Y Combinator is
it's a lot more about product-led growth, self-sign-up online.
Quick
but
growth. Yep.
I think there's a few interesting things that came out of it. One was one of our partners there, a few years later, had this really, I think, authentic and cool post where he mentioned that he realized after having left Y Combinator and went to operate again that a lot of his advice was like bad and outdated. I thought that was like super cool of him just to be that humble and open to say, wow, I got back into operating and I realized that I was sort of off base on stuff. So I think one of the learnings is no one knows your business better than you do.
Yeah.
Right? Like you've got to trust your gut on a lot of stuff. Outside advisors or even investors can have interesting insights, but nobody's going to know it better than you do, and you've got to be the one to make those decisions. The other thing is when your business partner is up all night saying, "Hey, I hear scratching noises. Do you guys hear that?" You should trust him and actually not think he's crazy because it turns out there's probably rat infestation in the place you're staying in.
That was amazing.
There were so many rats. It was disgusting.
At least it wasn't a poltergeist.
No, it wasn't that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It could have been way worse. Could have been way worse.
Well, with Y Combinator, like there's all sorts of opinions on it, right? But the one thing, I have never experienced it, but I've talked with a lot of people that have. For me, it's like these people can take a punch, regardless of whether it was in 2018 or this past summer. Because it is vigorous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, massive amounts of pressure are put on you in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine whatever, some things fall in and out of favor, but that principle of like roll up the sleeves and just be miserable, that's worth a lot in whatever type of entrepreneurship or life. So I think that is one of the merits of that. Going back to Halda, ultimately, you guys have known each other for a while. Like the idea of this personalized web overlay that doesn't require coding. Where did this germinate out of? Whose brain?
From the shower, actually.
Okay.
Yes. Well, so when Lance and I first got started, So I left from Podium. He had left from Chegg. His department, Chegg, had gotten sold to a different company. He's sort of faced with this decision: do I go there, or do I do my own thing? So it's, good on him. He's like, let's do my own thing. A few months later, we were at a lunch with just old Chegg homies, and Lance is like, hey, I've got something going. And Podium had grown to the point where it's like 150 people. And I'm like, it's not quite what it was when it was just smaller, and I loved it. So I was ready to jump ship. And when we started, it was just a digital marketing agency. The challenge with that had been that it was just very difficult to grow. You couldn't grow it predictably because there's just a lot of blocks. You have people that already have an agency of record, and you have to just time it perfectly, and lots of different reasons. So Lance and I needed a business, or wanted to grow a business that we could grow predictably, and we also wanted to make money while we slept, and so we were always testing new things. But we had a bad thesis in the beginning. You hear this a lot, but then in retrospect, we're like, why didn't we stay true to that?
One of the biggest learnings.
Yeah, is that for about 3 years,
Yeah.
we would take shiny new technology and try and apply it to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
AR, VR,
Yeah,
360
so
video.
Magic
It's
Leap
like-
had just raised $1
Yeah,
billion.
we just-
We're like, this is the future. Let's do this. And turns out we're really bad at that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, we had successes, but like the graveyard of the stuff that we tried for like 3 years is massive. Until finally we got our heads on right and said, okay, let's first really understand a problem. What are people trying to do? And now let's build a solution for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So anyway, we did a research study within an association within higher ed, just because that's where a lot of our experience was, and really understood the problem, which is where Halda came from, which is most institutions have the same calls to action on their website. Apply now, learn more, contact us. They weren't super compelling to students. These university marketing teams are scratching their heads wondering why they're not converting on their website. And it's like, well, no, duh. I mean, there's no real value given to the student, so they're not going to leave their info.
So I was really lathered up in the shower one day. I mean, like heavy lather, right? And having a great time. And I got thinking just the day before, a couple days before, I had seen on an e-commerce site one of those spin it to win it pop-ups. Have you seen those?
Mm-hmm.
Get a discount.
Put in your email, spin the wheel. And I thought, man, that thing is so gimmicky and dumb, but I guarantee it converts like crazy.
Yeah.
So we got into work that day. I'm like, Lance, have you ever seen a pop-up on a university website? No, I haven't. So we're using the software for like landing pages to do marketing campaigns, and it had a pop-up feature on it. So we're like, okay, great. Well, we've already got access to something where we could build and test this. And
We already had some clients for our marketing,
Yep.
in our marketing company, so
just started
decided
testing.
to test it out.
And people were like, hey, I'm getting like 3 times more leads from this. So we just kept doing that more and more until we got to the point where we had about $500,000 in revenue in just like this one service that we were doing.
And doing it using off-the-shelf technology. It wasn't even our technology. We were borrowing it.
Gotcha.
So then we're like, okay, we can grow this predictably. It's
People
rolling in
want it.
money. People want it. It's actually having a big impact. That's another thing that drove us crazy about some of the general marketing services we were doing, at least in the industry we're doing. It's hard to track ROI. It's like, okay, well, you got clicks, you got website visits, but what actually happened there? So anyway, just like the ROI was clear, straight line. We got these names, this many applied, that many enrolled. There's the value that we generated. So everything just clicked. And that's when we turned to each other and said, okay, let's like start building our own technology around this and investing heavily, and away we go.
Very cool. And so with you guys with higher education, they, you mentioned there's like 4,000 of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some with, heavy prestigious pedigrees, and there's, the upstarts and everything in between.
Yep.
They want students. Right?
Correct.
And I believe them at face value when it is altruistic, right? Like win, lose, or draw. I'm a huge fan of college, whether it's the 2 years or the 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the rush to become an adult. And you can always pivot 50,000 times in this world that we have now. And you could go to school for economics and end up being a computer programmer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're going to learn and grow, and you're going to have fun times.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like you got the rest of your life to
Sort
not.
of formidable
happy.
formidable years, yeah.
Yeah. And so that, a student enrolling and learning the humanities or learning computer science, whatever it is a very good end result. But these colleges, that's what they're worried about, right? It's like that drying up. You guys are helping ultimately with the CRO conversion rate optimization. There's an acronym. These students end up in Econ 101, starting their lives. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, there are lots of the higher ed industry right now is going through a little bit of a shift.
Yeah.
And that happened or started with COVID, right?
Yeah.
Students weren't going to school. There was more of an online presence for universities, and then
a whole bunch didn't even graduate from high school, which creates a problem for them.
Yeah, and now I think there's a lot of, to your point, Garrett, is a lot of people are questioning the value of higher ed and saying, is it worth it? Is it worth all this money I'm paying? And so, it's kind of an interesting time right now in higher education. So for those small private liberal arts institutions who you've probably never heard of, getting students to know who they are and converting on their website is massively important.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully they're not charging an exorbitant amount of tuition, because there are some where it's like, not worth it, friend.
Yep. Yeah.
Could go down the road.
Yeah.
And have the same result. They're definitely in a position now where they've got to be more entrepreneurial and more adaptive.
Yep.
All right. So you guys are not new to this world, but I assume you still get kicks and enjoy in like the first customer, right? Do you guys remember who that was? Like,
yeah.
All right. We came up with the thesis, OKRs, whatever it is, but then boom, we actually have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was it? Do you guys remember?
It was Ursuline College, which is a small private
Catholic school.
all women's Catholic school out in Pepper Pike, Ohio.
Pepper Pike.
Wow.
Never heard of Pepper Pike.
Very cool.
We've been there. It's an amazing place.
Susan Delano, if you ever listen to this podcast, thank you.
So that was the first one.
Yep.
Kind of validated a few things.
Yeah.
Little money.
Yep.
And with the iterations of that first one to now, how much do you guys tweak and modify the product and the model?
A ton. It's actually fun to look back. We were just doing this recently. We look back at the very first one that we launched on Susan Delano's website at Ursuline College and what we have now. And it's just lots of laughs and can't believe that we sold that.
Yeah.
It actually gives you confidence. You're like, man, if we can sell that, imagine once we make this thing what we envision, it's going to be really fun.
Yep.
Yeah. You guys have the vision and you've got the customers coming in. You can't do it all yourselves, right? At some point, you got to hire a few folks and then more folks, and you might get to that 150.
I know, and then I'll have to quit. I'll have to leave.
Sounds like you'll be out.
Out already. Great.
There you know. There's.
I mean, if you want to get rid of me, just go on a hiring spree.
Hire a bunch.
There we go.
It's obviously still a frothy, hyper-competitive hiring market here. How do you guys go about picking your next group of people?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
We're still trying to get better at that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is being on this podcast, and trying to get the word out that, hey, we're here, we're in Provo, we want to, we're growing. When a lot of tech companies right now are having riffs, we're hiring and hoping to take advantage of some of that motion.
Yeah,
I think some of the mistakes that we've made in hiring, and fortunately it hasn't been a whole lot, and we've had some really big wins, but I think that there's a world where actually we got to get better at all of it. I don't know that we've been great at figuring out, do people have the technical skills we want? Not so much on the engineering side, because our CTO and head of product, both of whom were massive unlock hires, they're really good at that. But even in sales and account managers, I don't know that we've got a great formula for it yet, because there's an element of, okay, can you do the job? Are you organized enough? Can you build relationships? And then there's also this side of just personality and are you going to be fun to work with? So I don't know. You've done a bunch of these podcasts. I'm curious to know what you've heard in terms of what works well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I hope it never gets solved, right? Because you've got the people that are they can do it just based on the electronic submission, right? Whatever it is, the resume, the previous work. I do think looking people in the eyes for a lot of folks is still critical. There's we're going to spend a lot of time together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're really smart. You seem really good, but you're also annoying. you might be a good fit somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But you're not a good fit here. But like this is still a very small community, right? Like we can act like we're bigger than we are, but we're not. Hey, have you ever worked with, or hey, I see that you might have crossed paths with. That is probably one of the more telling indicators.
Yeah.
Because there's a little bit of laziness in that, right? Like, I'll let this other person validate. I trust this other person, and that might get me halfway there on my decision.
Yeah.
Then the other half might become a little bit easier. So yeah, you've got the camp that's like really personality first, which is where I would be. It's like, you might not be the best in the world, but I know you'll show up on time and you'll be happy and you're gregarious.
You're going to put it.
You're a pretty hard worker.
Yeah.
A good culture fit, I think, is a big part of that.
But then you've got the other camp where like they have to be A plus no matter what. I wouldn't make it there for 5 seconds. I'm like a C minus, D pluser. And I'm like, you're going to miss out on some. You're going to miss out on a few people with that.
Yeah.
And then, having never grown or scaled anything large, like at some point you got to kind of tweak how you do it.
Yeah.
Right. Becomes a little less informal, and you just kind of hope that it trickles down to where people in their respective departments or fields are like still, at least for me, keeping it personalized and making sure the whole culture's there.
Yeah.
All right. So I've pulled a couple of funny one-liners, like when kids go, whether they're student athletes or, it's usually rich kids, like they go and visit 10 colleges, and inevitably they'll want to go to parties, right? Whether it's on Greek Row or in the dorms, oftentimes that's a huge selling point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for you guys, like the party is on the website, right? Like I am getting what I want out of this. Like I'm getting the information. I'm being prompted at the right time to ask more specific questions. So the fun aspect of it is the question here, like, how do you guys make it fun and engaging, and the prompts are witty?
Yeah. There's a lot of A/B testing that goes into it, and a lot of just creativity. I think one thing we try and do a lot of with our clients and workshopping with them and also internally is to make sure that we put students first. Like, what's their experience? Because that's what's really going to matter at the end of the day. Is how do you engage with them? How do you speak to them? What do they need? Because it's interesting. Some organizations will sort of clench up a little bit, like, no, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to ask them what their biggest concern is.
Yeah.
But when you take it from just, hey, I'm going to have a conversation with this student, and taking it from their perspective and
making it more human.
Make it more human. That's one of the values. I think that's one thing that Lance and I fortunately did well. Lots of mistakes, but one thing is we outlined values like right at the beginning of the business. 7 of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's embarrassing. I should definitely.
There are 7, yeah.
Because we added one. Or is there 8 now?
Yeah, we just added one.
Okay,
so you're right.
So, but a key one there is like, if we do the right things for students, then everybody wins. And then of course, as we grow outside of that, it's just in general, if you do the right things for that website visitor, everyone will win.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that's been fun for us, is that if you can add real value, make it engaging and fun for that person, well then you're going to collect their contact information and have a lead for the business, which will help them, or university, which will help them get enrollment or a sale, which makes them win. And of course, the more that happens, the more we win, the more we renew contracts and grow. So
as a good, just quick, like funny example is with our tool, we have a response page, which is really our product, where a student can get information in the moment.
Based on what they told us.
Yeah, it's not just like, hey, we'll be in touch in 24 hours, right? They actually get a response. So one thing that we instituted was when it does show a response, there's confetti that falls down, right? Which you normally wouldn't see on a stale university website, but that adds a little pop of fun and a little bit of a party on the page.
Lance had talked about, talking about how products evolve, right? We could never do anything like that for the longest time because we just had really crappy product.
I was like, I just want to see confetti.
I just want to see confetti. And so
cool.
Spencer, our CTO, Spencer Peterson, he surprised us one team meeting. We do team meetings on Fridays. And he's just like going about, okay, and here's a new thing that we did. And he did a great job of downplaying it. You would have thought we won the lottery. You would have thought we just raised $1 billion or we sold for $1 billion the way that room reacted. It was just
when
like,
the confetti fell.
When the confetti fell. It was just like everyone.
Crap around the
just
room.
The whole
like,
room blew up.
We finally had our confetti.
It's those little victories are the ones that count. You compound those.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's fun. And I guarantee the weekend was fun, right?
Yeah, totally.
Left on a high
and
note.
good memories. Like, you never forget that moment. It was fun.
very cool. We talked about this right out of the gate. We used Silicon Slopes as an example, but even me, C minus D plus player, can kind of see that this could be applied in other parts of this world, right?
Yeah.
Is that a plan?
Yeah, it's a big part of our plan. In fact, a lot of our focus this year is trying to figure out what is that next industry that we can go into that maybe acts similar to higher ed, that has a little bit of a buying journey where you want to help the website visitor make informed decisions and personalize the responses to their specific circumstances. So yeah, it could be applied anywhere, really.
We have a few hunches right now. We don't know exactly what that'll be, and so it's just launching a lot of tests, figuring out where it resonates, where we can add the most value to an organization, and saying, okay, great, let's start building around that too. In fact, we've got a team right now out in New York at a private K-12 conference, so not deviated too far from higher ed, but surprisingly, it's not for enrollment, but it's for donor engagement,
for advancement.
Advancement, and so they're having awesome conversations out there and teeing up a bunch of deals of people that are thinking, okay, how can I personalize the donor journey?
Yeah.
And so
for nonprofits or political campaigns or whatever, it gets exciting.
And that's where we get excited about how big we can do this as we keep making the right decisions, is just that it can apply to really anywhere. I think we'll add more value to some industries than others, but yeah, it's pretty widely applicable.
Yeah.
Did I just say applicable?
Applicable. You made that word up.
That's not a real word.
Could be. All right. Very cool. So you're in the throes of, it sounds like, seed, Series A, and now you get to the point where you've got all the problems of a real company.
Yeah.
HR, onboarding, growth. You've got people now that have an opinion.
That's the worst, right?
Opinions. But some of them paid a little bit of money to you guys to have those opinions, right?
Yeah.
Which is fundraising.
Yep.
We could talk for hours on this.
Yeah.
But you guys have recently gone through it. Just for those that are listening that might go through it or are going through it, what are some tidbits that you can share there on best practices?
Yeah, I think maybe giving an example might be the best thing. We, as you mentioned earlier, we went through Y Combinator. Yeah. So we've raised money before. In that scenario, we were raising money on an idea, right? And it's much more difficult to raise money on an idea. When we go in front of investors at YC, there's a lot more consternation from investors because there's not a lot of revenue to show. You haven't really proven that you can move the needle there. And so this time around with Halda, we had, as we mentioned, bootstrapped to $1 million in ARR. And so it was much easier, turns out, to raise money when you have revenue, when you can already show a good go-to-market, strategy. It was 100 times easier to raise money.
Well, and I think that at least the way that Lance and I approached it, a lot of entrepreneurs think, okay, I've got this idea, now I need to go get an engineer. There's been enough software built, at least in the stuff that we do, which is marketing tech, there's enough software built that I would imagine for almost any idea, between off-the-shelf software and integration tools like Zapier, you can cobble, or ChatGPT, and you could cobble together a product pretty easily.
At least to test it out.
At least to test it out and validate and see if you can start rolling some money in it. I think the other thing, in terms of bootstrapping, Lance and I are obviously really passionate about getting it going without saying the first thing I need to do is go get investment money.
Yeah.
Is finding the right type of market. Because if you're thinking, okay, this is a great idea for a product, but it's in a hyper-competitive market, and I've got my bar to beat my competitors is already that high, that should probably tell you, well, probably not the best market to start in.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were able to sign pretty big contracts with very minimal software because the market needed a solution so bad. Higher ed, it's underserved. So I think for people that are just getting started, if you're finding, man, I've got a huge technology moat I got to get over before I can really get going, I would think, man, look at a different market that's less served.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I agree. I think it was amazing to see the difference in fundraising, even with the Y Combinator stamp of approval.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out a lot of revenue beats that stamp of approval
any day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you guys raise the money, I'm interested in the brass tacks of your leadership committee. all right, we are going to use this money for XYZ. We're going to use it on this, timeline. How does it actually work? Like, oh, we got the money. It's confetti time, or
lots of confetti,
Yeah.
lots of bouncy houses.
No, we actually haven't touched the money yet.
No, not yet.
Which has been nice. So, yeah, I think there was consensus on using a lot of the money on product, so engineering, product ideations, R&D. So that's where a lot of our money will go. Obviously, you have to hire people to be able to do that. I think we operate a pretty lean and mean shop right now. We're in Provo, which is, we're not in Lehigh, where maybe you get crazy expensive up here for space. So we're all crammed into a space in the startup building in Provo, which is great. Yeah, I think we have money. We're ready to leverage it to grow, and
the talk track from investors has changed massively, as I'm sure you've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
where it used to be grow at all costs, and now, even as we chatted with our team regarding our 2023 plan, the advice was, the traditional playbook is triple, double, double, make that work no matter how much you have to spend.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, hey, grow responsibly. Like, if you can show that, you could become profitable,
mm-hmm.
and
while
still growing by 50 to 70% a year, man, that's really awesome, which is just so weird from like how it had been.
Yeah.
The good news for us is it really jives with how Lance and I like to build a business anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, we're not crazy spenders. But when we see, okay, I put $1 in there, I get $3 back. Let's do that all day long.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a pretty balanced mix between product and go to market. Like, we're in an industry where it's an inside sales team, and you're gonna work deals, and that's what Lance and I have always done in our careers. So we like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And how do you guys? Let's say you hired me for one day.
Yes.
For free.
Yes.
And my idea was like, let's go buy a suitcase and put somebody on a train and have them go to like every college of those 4,000 and see if they can sell it old-fashioned style.
Yeah.
And then you guys show me the door and say, thanks for coming. That was a great idea. But in that example, like, what if it's a bad idea on how to grow and spend the money? How do you guys resolve disputes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would say hop on the train. I wouldn't discourage you from hopping on a train. A lot of what we do is just testing, right?
Yeah.
Our very first value, we talked about values earlier, is we seek truth in everything we do. And that requires testing and iterating. And so when you show up with your suitcase, I would say, awesome, Garrett. Let us know how it goes.
Well, maybe here's enough money to visit 5.
Yeah, let us know how it goes.
Works.
Then we hop on the train again. Because if it works well, we wouldn't have known that unless you hopped on the train. So
yeah,
a lot of it's testing, experimenting, failing a bunch.
A lot.
And learning from the failings and continuing to test and iterate.
Well, and I've got to give a little shout out to John Grover in this moment, because
VP of product.
He's our VP of product. That guy is just money. No,
Rock
he's
star.
Not available for anyone else to try and hire him. If I hear you go after him from this podcast.
Shouldn't have said his
Crap,
name
okay,
down.
actually, he's terrible. I hate him. But no, John came in and he introduced this hygiene, especially on the product side, as you might imagine, VP of product, to where he and his team are really good at testing, getting customer validation. But then when it comes to, okay, what should we build next? He introduced into our organization this great way to debate and then vote and score and prioritize, and then have even one more way to reassess and say, okay, does this feel right? Okay, here we go. And he's been great at bringing that type of organization to us, to where a lot of it's not just like, okay, well, that's your gut, this is my gut, and we're just going to fight it out. So it's between like, hey, let's seek truth. How do we get more info? No egos allowed. It's just like, whatever's going to work best, that's what we're going to try and do.
There are no sacred cows.
And if the data is just pointing equally to 2 different directions, it's rock, paper, scissors. That's the only way you can do it.
All of our big decisions are
rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
It's refreshing to know that I'm not the only one.
No.
Yeah. As far as like big clients go, like every company probably has like their big golden calf or whale.
Yeah.
What's the biggest school Is it like Texas? Is it Ohio State?
Interesting. My mind goes to two different things when you say that. Our biggest client in terms of volume we do is Texas Tech. We do tens of thousands of inquiries for them.
Yeah.
And it's going gangbusters. But when you say who's your biggest client, my mind also goes to results, and that would be one of our smallest schools, which is Harper College, a 2-year school where we just got them 203 enrollments just from our tool that lives on their website. So,
well, and for context, those 203 enrollments came from an inquiry pool, which was about the same size as their like standard inquiry form on their website. So the inquiry pool is the same size, but we got 203. From their own, they had like 19, 20. And so 10 times more enrollments.
Yeah.
Just from, I think, what we were talking about earlier in terms of, it's more personalized. I'm going to have more affinity. That guy who says, hey, Garrett, here, I know what you get every time. Here's your Rockstar or whatever it is. I want to go back there.
Yeah.
Because they know me.
Yeah.
And they treat me well. They know what I want. And so I think that to us was really exciting because it's not only, really clear ROI, but that the comparison there.
Yeah.
To say, adding personalization, building a little bit more
10x.
Human connection, 10x your results from the same size of inquiry pool. It's really exciting.
Yeah. And then one step further for me with the human psychology part, let's say that, the school president is like, this is amazing. You guys would want them to be a blabbermouth and go tell everybody else.
Yeah.
But they might not want to, right? Like,
Had a few who have been that way,
Yeah, never mind.
Keep it secret, yeah. Yeah, because everyone's competing, right?
Yeah.
It's a competitive space.
I guess if it's like East Coast or West Coast, it's fine blabbering and like, but otherwise, if it's like, that college is only 20 miles down the road, I'd rather not.
Yeah. I think one thing, great book about word of mouth marketing, Contagious by Jonah Berger, recommended read. One thing that he talks about in like how do you get more word of mouth is you make consumption of your product public, meaning you don't have to have them talk about it to be able to let people know that they use you. And in our space, that's really easy because on every single form that we've got on every website ever, it has this little small powered by Halda in the bottom. In fact, just this weekend, we had an inquiry submission that came from someone clicking on that. So the nice thing for us is we think about, okay, how do we get the word out? Is that if somebody goes to a website, interacts with our software, and is like, wow, how can I get this on my website? We're always advertising for ourselves, powered by Halda. It links back to our site so that people can know where we're at.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, this has been fun. We could keep going, but we're limited by a little bit of time. But congrats on everything that you guys have done.
Thanks.
It's always fun to see that you guys are enjoying life. And you might be in the struggle, but it's fulfilling.
It's a fun struggle, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd love to have you guys on again in a year to see like if you've gone into some new areas, some new industries, and see how everything went, see if you've bought enough confetti.
Never. You can never have enough.
We'll get not only digital confetti, but we need real confetti cannon in the office every time we close a deal.
Oh, boom. A lot of clean.
There you go.
Yeah, the person who signs the deal has to clean it up.
Or you just stimulate the economy and you hire a janitor.
There you go. I like this.
Spread the wealth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Garrett.
Thanks.